What's up, guys? It's MB Boxing. I just finished up watching JoJo Diaz versus Mercito Gesta, and this was a 10-rounder in the super lightweight division. And this fight was Saturday, March 18th, from the Walter Pyramid in Long Beach, California. And this fight was broadcasted on the Zone. And in this fight, Mercito Gesta was able to upset JoJo Diaz, getting a split decision victory. What a turn of events here. This was a massive upset that many people were not expecting. This fight was supposed to be the co-feature on the Gabriel Rosado and Gilberto Ramirez card, but obviously Ramirez missed weight and was taken off. So then this Gesta and Diaz fight was brought on as the main event. And let me just say this first. This was a very fun fight while it lasted. I knew it would be pretty entertaining because in Jojo Diaz's last couple fights, he's had some pretty fun fights to watch. Like when he fought Zepeda, the Devin Haney fight wasn't that terrible either. And the Fortuna fight was also pretty interesting. And even against Rakimov, yeah, he's had a decent run in his past couple of fights of having some good fights. And Gesta comes from the Philippines. He's trains at Wildcard Boxing Gym, and he seemingly had a fun style when I was watching some tape on him. But I mean, in the end, this fight was really close in my opinion. I had it scored 95-95. I had it a draw. But the three judges had this bout all over the place. One judge had it 97-93 for Diaz. And then one judge had it 99-91 for Gesta. And then the other one had it 98-92 for Gesta. I definitely could see 96-94 either way, or 95-95. But most likely I had this fight leaned in favor of Gesta, I would say. Most likely 96-94 Gesta or 95-95 a draw, but I could definitely see 96-94 for Diaz. But just to break this fight down round by round, the first round Gesta was very active, definitely won it over. He definitely won that round over Diaz based on activity. However, the second round was really close, and it was one of the swing rounds of this fight. Gesta was more active, but Diaz landed some nice power punches, so I gave the nod to Diaz because he landed the more eye-catching shots in that round. Then in round number 3, Gesta was on the ropes, and this was probably Diaz's biggest round in the third, where Gesta was on the ropes and he was getting hammered with big left hands from Diaz. That was a big Diaz round in the third. Then the fourth round was a very quiet round, which I edged to Gesta, and those more quiet rounds were definitely in Gesta's favor, like rounds 4, 5, and 6. Those were all rounds I gave to Gesta. Like here and there, Diaz would land a big shot, but then Gesta, throughout the entire round, would be boxing much better, peppering Diaz with shots on his gloves, on his arms, on the side of his head. Like he was just peppering him with shots, and Diaz wasn't really landing much back, and the output of Gesta was much more eye-catching, and it was scoring much more points than Diaz's work in those middle rounds. Then Diaz almost had a resurgence in rounds 7, 8, and 9. Those were 3 rounds that I gave to him. He started picking up the pressure. Gesta started to look like he was gassing a bit. His activity and output was much lower than it was earlier. He wasn't really throwing as much, and Diaz started to outwork Gesta in rounds 7, 8, and 9. He was coming forward more, landing the better shots, and he won those rounds pretty clearly, in my opinion. But then in the 10th and final round, this round was also really close. Could have went either way. I edged it to Gesta. Gesta landed a good left hand towards the end of the round. Diaz looked sharp in the early stages of the 10th, but then the middle was all taken over, in my opinion, by Gesta and his boxing, peppering Diaz on the outside as well, landing some nice body shots too. But round 10 was close, but I edged it to Gesta, like I said before. So that ultimately accumulates to a 95-95 scorecard, in my opinion. Round number 2 and round 10 were the 2 rounds that I could definitely see go either way. Round 10 I gave to Gesta. Round 2 I gave to Diaz. So you could do whatever you want to do with that information. I mean, it'll the widest it could be, in my opinion, is like 6-4 either way. And I had a 5-5 obviously, but I could definitely see either of those 2 scorecards, and then obviously the scorecard I had. But if you did watch this fight, comment down below how you scored it. I would imagine it's pretty close. I mean, this was a very competitive fight. But this goes into the question: what is next for Mercito Gesta? He is now 34-3, getting the biggest victory of his career by a mile. I mean, this was a huge win for Gesta. He was his last fight. He also got an upset over Joel Diaz Jr. and Joel Diaz Jr. he's levels lower than this Diaz Jr. that he did face here, and JoJo Diaz Jr. And this was a massive win, like I just said, for Gesta. And for Gesta, I mean, really, it could be hard to say what could be next for him. I definitely think he's gonna get put into a big fight, like a big co-main event. Obviously, on one of these Golden Boy cards, he might face someone that's like an established, maybe someone who's just outside the top 10, just in there maybe in the lightweight division, on like a Golden Boy card. I mean, I don't think these guys are going to rematch necessarily. I mean, if they do, I mean, I don't really see the point of them making another big main event again for this fight. And this fight wasn't even supposed to be the main event, like I said before. So, I mean, yeah, I just don't really see them having a rematch, even though this was a very, very big upset. Diaz was almost like a 10-1 favorite. But still, I mean, it's an option, like I said, or I said that I don't see it happening, but it's definitely an option. Obviously, there's a lot of things that could be options, but I just don't see it happening. But for Gesta, like I said before, I could definitely see him face someone within the top 15, top 10 in the lightweight division in a very nice like co-feature bout on yet another Golden Boy card, because this win was, like I said, huge for him. But as for JoJo Diaz, he has to rethink a lot. This is his third straight loss, and at least the other two losses he had were to really good fighters. I mean, he lost to William Zepeda, who's a up and coming undefeated lightweight, and then he lost to Devin Haney, who's now the undisputed champion of the world. And against Haney, he put up a good effort. He only lost like 7-5. Like, it was a really competitive fight. But then here he lost to an absolutely unknown Mercito Gesta. So, I mean, this is a really tough loss for him. I mean, if he wants to continue on with his career, I mean, he's only, I think, in his early 30s. So, I mean, he just has to get back in the ring, get some solid, little, easy comeback wins. I mean, because yet again, even though he's been at the top tier level of boxing for his entire career, I mean, he has to just tone it down a bit. And like Gesta here, he probably was a bit too cocky in this fight. I'm not going to take anything away from Gesta. I mean, Gesta fought the perfect game plan in this fight to win. But, I mean, Diaz, I mean, he probably wasn't expecting Gesta to put up such a good fight because of how low he was ranked on Box Record, because how low his opposition was. I mean, those are definitely thoughts that were running through Diaz's mind, probably. Because, I mean, Gesta, I mean, he was a relatively unknown fighter, like I mentioned before. So for Diaz, I think he should just rebuild himself back up, to take on some fighters that he could definitely win, like no question. Like not someone like, at least like Gesta had a good record going into the fight. His record going in was 33-3. So I mean, at least he had something there with that. But I mean, Diaz needs to face some guys like real journeymen that he could definitely beat, build himself back up, and then possibly get right back into that top 10, top 15 mix in the lightweight division. So overall, Mercito Gesta heavily upsets JoJo Diaz, defeating him by split decision in a very competitive and fun fight to watch. And yeah, that's really it. I'm MB Boxing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.